Yesterday I watched it on YouTube. Now I know it's a fact.
Okay, let's see if we can get through this. School holidays are making this very hard. I was going to do a thing about the whole sexuality thing and trends, essentially, or cults. And to get us started, I have Cal. Queer's monthly event, Queer's Beer, marks a new era of greater visibility for LGBT people in Kalgoorlie and Boulder. And I think this is all about visibility. I think this is about putting on a show. I think that's what we've come down to. With all the legal and social issues essentially taken care of, yes, you can say, oh, but religious people haven't accepted us. But they have a right to their own mindset, to their own belief, to their own ideas on what society is about. They don't have to buy your shit. As I don't have to buy your shit. And the reason I'm not buying your shit is because this word visibility that you keep making an issue. When I was a kid, growing up, there were only two groups of people who were known for having tattoos. Hookers and sailors. And when I look around me now, everyone's a hooker and a sailor. It's that simple. Because what happened was tattoos were edgy. Hookers and sailors had them, and therefore it was edgy to get a tattoo, to be one of those outsiders, the rebels, those on the outside of society, the edge of society. Bikers were the other group that had tattoos. But even there, the tattoos just got more edgy, everyone had to have a tattoo. Then it got scarification. Then we get chopping your genitals off for fun. And we're at a point now where the latest trend is everyone has to be fucking queer in order to stand out, to make yourselves more important than all the other people around you, to be visible in the crowd who might otherwise ignore you. And I'm sick to fucking death of it. Seriously, can we just go back to tattoos being edgy? I don't want to know who you're going to bed with. I don't want you particularly knowing who I'm going to bed with. And when we're there, I don't want you knowing what we're doing. And I don't fucking want to know what you're doing. Okay? It's that simple. It's really not important. My life is a hell of a lot more than what I do in my bedroom. You want to make it your life about your bedroom? That's fine. But don't fucking think we all need to know about it. I'm sick of this shit. Anyway, LGBT people in regional Western Australia say a lack of visible queer communities in country towns and cities makes people feel isolated and less likely to access support services. And I'm calling bullshit on that. Because there are tiers of services available in the bush. Nobody gets more services in the Aboriginal community. Because they get all the services everyone else gets. Plus, they get an Aboriginal cut on top. Now, I can actually pinpoint this to a time and place in my life where I realised just how much of our services could be dedicated to the Aboriginal population. I was working in arts through a group that were doing arts financing in Queensland when the Queensland government a few years back released its policies for arts funding. And tucked in that document, a one-line paragraph, said Aboriginal arts was to be put forward as the priority art form for all funding. That was documented in the state government's art funding. That's essentially how all our services work. That's essentially why you have to tick a box on a document and tell them whether you're Aboriginal. Because you will get access to greater services. It's no great mystery. Up that ladder, you have women. There are women's services everywhere. And not only that, but a lot of the community organisations, especially ones not involved in sport, they're all dedicated to women. They're all run by women. They're all funding women. It's very hard for a man to get into the arts community, for instance. I did it by opening my own business based in performance art. And by doing so, I went around the need for government or public funding. But in those areas of government and public funding where I did volunteer my services, it's all women. The money is going mainly to women. The only men I ever remembered seeing were, oddly enough, Aboriginal men. In any case, tied to the women is the LBGT, who get plenty of support through services linked to the women's services or above and beyond the women's services. Then you have youth services. After that, the kids essentially have their schools and their care that way through the state. There's one group who have nothing. If you don't go to the pub and drink, then you have nothing. If you're looking for support, you have nothing. I'm not entirely right there. The men's shed exists, but that's the group of people who have no other support services. One charitable organisation which manages to survive because it has royal patronage. The men's shed is all there is. And I've been a men's shed member. And the reason I'm currently not a men's shed member is because I'm only in my 50s. And apparently it's an old boys club for boys much older than me, which leaves men under the age of about 65, retirement age, with nothing, absolutely bloody nothing. So don't give me this shit that you don't want to access support services. Go take a flying leap off something fucking big. You're full of shit. You just want attention. You want people to offer you services. You want people to help you out all the time. You want to be noticed and you want to be supported and you want to be nurtured and cared for. And go fuck yourselves. Seriously. It's probably the next trend anyway. Okay, we'll go to the key points here. LBGT people in regional WA. By the way, I'm in outback New South Wales. So where they are is essentially not too different from where I am. And I still call bullshit. Out here in the bush, we got far less services than the cities, but they still rank in the order I've just ranked them. Okay. Pride groups in Kalgoorlie, Boulder and Geraldton are helping to increase visibility. Group representatives say their towns are far less conservative than they're sometimes perceived to be. Well, then why the fuck do you need the visibility? Because I agree with you. Nobody out here essentially gives a fuck who you sleep with. There are gay guys out here. There are lesbians out here. There are bisexuals out here. Shit. I have a bisexual in my family. That's not that fucking weird to have these people around you and in your family. It's not that fucking weird that people are accepting of these things or are willing to let it pass because it's not really relevant to them. But you need your fucking tattoo so you can look like you're rebelling. We are talking about people who don't need an LBGT group. No, they need a fucking queer group. Alright, I'm going to move on because this really fucking gets up my nose the way people try to pretend there's just nothing out here for us. I've always made my own way in the bush. I bought a cinema business very cheap. I don't have money, so I bought it dirt cheap. And I ran it like a full-on professional cinema out here in the bush. I closed it up with a massive debt. I then supported a community radio station. I presented four shows and produced them. I produced another show for someone else. I was the technical supervisor and technical support, and for a lot of the time that it was up and running, the manager. I was also the person paying most of the bills. And this was with the massive debt of a cinema behind me. I was still funding a radio station. Sometimes there are opportunities out here, but you have to make them. And then when someone else like me comes along and makes them for you, they fall apart because you don't want them to be the way they are. You want them to be queerer than they are. Or you want them to have more tattoos than they are. You know, I couldn't get any Aboriginal people involved. I refused to do committee meetings where I do a welcome to country ceremony at the start, because fuck you. If you can't participate in any of the meetings that I'm in, then I don't have to thank you for anything. I'm providing something you are more than welcome to come and help out with, to get involved in. Have your blackfella shows, whatever the fuck you want. But when you can't show up, I got nothing to thank you for. Coming out in regional Victoria and overcoming homophobia. The secrecy for LGBT people. Now, these guys are old enough that there probably was a thing, but it seems from the story that these two guys had a relationship and nobody seemed to care a great deal. They were together for a long time. They split up, and the guy who was essentially the owner of the farm got killed, I believe. But there doesn't seem to be any real story of shame and shit in this. It's just, this is like invented fear. Oh, it's so horrible out in the bush. Yet the previous story said people are more accepting than we think they are. Well, yes, people generally don't give a shit. There's a few wackos. And you know what? You know who rapes gay guys the most? You know which community uses date rape drugs the most in this country? It's the gay men. Now, you know who's the most violent statistically as far as their relationships go, domestic violence? It's the lesbians. When you're building these stories around the idea that the whole country has a problem with the LBGTQ, but you're not willing to address the problems within that community, then I don't have time for you. Seriously, do not have time for you. Address your own problems. The rest of us are getting along quite well with the idea you exist. And here's something that never happened. I put money on this one because the fucking story behind this is crap. Drag queen breaks hand punching Nazi in the face. Now, I read through this story. True, I gave up before I hit the end. It was just so crap, it was unbelievable. Because this all ends about the internal bitch fighting in the trans community. Yet I'm meant to believe that there are many bad ways to break your hand, a few good ones, but this drag queen found the absolute best way. Yeah, because punching people in the face is now the acceptable thing to do. I don't give a fuck if they say they're a Nazi or not. I don't give a fuck if they say they're going to take you down. If they haven't actually done you any harm and you strike them, then you're the aggressor. You're the person who took the action first. But as we go down here, we come to this nice highlighted bit which I've prepared earlier. I was approached by a man at the store who informed me that he was a Nazi and he wanted to cut my faggot throat. He continued. Sorry, I will not use that descriptive because I don't have any respect for the person who made that statement. Seriously, you were in a store and someone approached you and said, "I'm a Nazi." You really expect me to think that happened? You really think I'm that fucking stupid? I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the punk movement around the 80s. I remember skinheads very well, thank you. And they did not walk around telling us they were fucking Nazis. In fact, they barely walked around telling us they were skins. We were just expected to know who we were fighting. People do not walk up to you and say, "I'm a Nazi." Get fucked. Just get fucked. If he wanted to cut your faggot throat, it's probably because you were being an obnoxious prick. And then apparently you punched him in the face. You're an aggressor. You're a cunt. You probably punched a fucking door anyway. Probably punched a wall. I punched a door and put my hand through one. I didn't break my hand. So, moving on, because I'm sick to fucking death of this shit. I'm going to load this one right out. And this is topping off that trans thing. Hundreds of young trans people seeking to help to return to original sex. Now, I was talking about tattoos earlier. One of the major industries around tattooing is tattoo removal. And when you can't remove them, it's changing your tattoos, which used to be the preferred way to do it. You'd have your wife's name on you. She'd divorce you in a horrible case, and you'd scrub over her name in black or try and change it to something else. These days, laser, I guess you call it a surgery, to remove the tattoo is a growth industry. And here we have the latest trend, that queer trend, where hundreds of young trans people, it's not just the young ones, there are older guys who've tried this for years, decades, trying to get gender realignment surgery. The difference between this one is, these people have set up a charity. Where are we? Charlie Evans, 21, was born female but identified as male for nearly 10 years before detransitioning. The number of young... It's probably easier for the women if they haven't gone through some sort of major surgery. Whereas with the men, there is a definite chance they've done themselves chemical castration with the job, even if they did remain intact. I'm just having a look if I can find where they say they're setting up a GoFundMe, but I can't see it there. So, but yes, the whole thing is that these people followed the trend of transitioning because that's what the trend is now. And now they want other people to pay for them to get their bodies sort of back to where they were. And I'm sorry, but I'm coming closer and closer to thinking I like the TERFs. Because of all the people standing their ground, the TERFs are doing a pretty damn good job of it under fire. I can't stand TERFs. They are fucking radical feminists, as said in the term. Trans exclusionary radical feminist. They are radical feminist. But on the trans exclusionary, they're not wrong. The people they're trying to exclude are biologically men. You cannot change our DNA. You cannot change our chromosomes. We are what we were born. There are very few people born down the middle somewhere. And the number of variations where our chromosomes are screwed up that don't come with other mental and physical difficulties. It is often an extreme disability to have screwed up chromosomes. Very few people are neatly hermaphrodite. These people have big problems. They don't need you trending what they've got and trying to make out you're the same as them. Someone whose chromosomes are X triple Y or something, and they have physical deformities and difficulties with life. They don't need you, a perfectly healthy person, pretending that you've got the same problems they've got. You're dismissing what they are, the difficulties they face in life. You're essentially LARPing as a disabled person. That's what you're doing when you try to make out that those people with real issues are the same as you. You're undermining them. Righto. Then we come to my battle with the transgender thought police. This is someone who's done research into people who are detransitioning, and he's come up with his own papers and everything on what's going on, and nobody wants to hear. It's very trendy to transition. It is where I was going with the next story. Why cult might be the wrong word for new religious movements. Because it's a cult that is stopping people like this from bringing out the information that they have dug up, the research they have done into transitioning and what it is and what it could be and where it leads to, and why people are detransitioning or returning as best they can to their original form. Why cult might be the wrong word for most new religious movements. I actually agree with this story, and yet I disagree with this story, because I agree that we are dismissing new religious groups by not just calling them all the same thing. My problem is, I think religion is the wrong word. Religion is the word that puts a cult on a pedestal and makes out that that cult is more important than other cults. And I think we should just accept that all feminism, Christianity, Islam, alien lords as she's got here, they're all just cults. The number of people who follow a cult doesn't change the fact that it's a cult. When we make it a religion because it has a large following, we prop it up, we make it look more important. And like the transgender cult, which is starting to fall apart under its own weight, if we can call these things cults and we can address them as cults, if we can address feminism as a cult, then we can try to break people from indoctrination. When we pretend that they have an actual meaning to all the things they say, when they say, oh, we're about equal rights for women, we want equality, and then we pretend that that's all they're about, when we don't understand just how fucking cultish they are, and we don't accept it or note it, we allow them to continue to influence people negatively. And I think we do the same with religion. By propping religion up on a pedestal, we essentially say, but this one's okay. No, this social movement is okay. This religion is okay. Cults, they're terrible. I think we just call them all cults. They're all fucking terrible. Now, I've covered quite a bit of stuff that bugs the shit out of me here, so I thought we'd finish on a happier note. Not a happy note, because it is about, well, suicide out in the outback and out bush. Blue Tree Project tackles mental health and suicide in regional Australia. Now, the reason it's called the Blue Tree is apparently it kicked off with a guy, Jaden White, who he and a mate, when they were kids, went out and painted a tree blue in Dad's paddock to freak him out. And Jaden committed suicide. So I'm not sure Jaden's suicide is entirely bush related. Jaden, as it says down here, was living in Sydney when he died. So maybe there were other things going on. Maybe his sexuality. I don't deny that. I was bullied in school, and there was one guy who used to love bullying just about anyone he could get his hands on. And his big thing was to go around calling everyone gay or just trying to beat them up. Well, it's got to be coming on 10 years ago now, maybe, that I was told Douglas had ended his life he died. I'm not sure, I can't remember how. Crossdresser in Sydney. So I don't deny that it could have been his sexuality that took him to the city and was part of this. I do not deny people's sexuality can be a problem for them. All I deny is that people are ignoring them in today's society. That's a load of shit. But anyway, there is a big problem with services in the bush, and as this organisation have found, this project has found, it is men who don't get the services, and it is also men committing suicide most of the time. Now, that's nationwide. It's actually pretty much almost worldwide that men commit suicide more than women. But in the outback, there are no services. Nobody seems to care. You hear about it occasionally, how hard it is in the bush during the droughts. And let's face it, we've been in almost constant drought for bloody 30 odd years or something. We get breaks from it for a short while, then we get another 10 years slapped on. So, talk about how hard it is on the farms and in the farming communities. But nobody seems to be willing to set up actual services that deal with men. Like I say, you've got the men's shed. But I'm too young for the men's shed. If I get depressed, the only people I have to fall back on are essentially my mates. And I don't really have many mates. I'm not that sort of person that needs people around me. I have my family. They're the only people I really need around me. I have some good friends further away from me that I really can't just turn to in a time of need and cry on their shoulder. 800 kilometres between us puts that out of range, right? So if I wanted to talk to somebody here, I would essentially have to go to the pub, get myself drunk enough that I needed a shoulder to cry on. Now, I'm an emotional drunk, so I'm lucky that way. But when I sober up, that doesn't mean I've actually solved my problems. So, if I wanted to talk to someone, if I really wanted to just sit with someone and maybe not talk to them, my only option is really going to the pub. That's it. Or I have to start making videos and have a moan. Or I have to go onto social media and have a bit of a bitch. But I'm not letting go by doing that. I'm just sort of venting a bit. And everyone can vent. But if I want to talk to somebody, there is nobody. And I think it's important that projects like the Blue Tree Project be allowed to flourish and note these things, note the findings they make, and study why men are committing suicide, but also when they find there are no services for men, that these things make impact somewhere. We have a women's minister federally, but we have no men's minister. We have Department of Women and Children in New South Wales. I think other states have very similar. But we have no department for men. We have LBGT politicians pushing the LBGT cause. But when one man stands up in Parliament, we did have someone standing up in Parliament and argue with feminists about their funding, their achievements. Senator Leahelm, sorry, Senator, or if I'm ex-Senator, if I'm getting that wrong, I wish you'd stuck with what you were doing and you had my vote. But he gets ignored. No media time, no press coverage. He points out the flaws and the failings of the feminist domestic violence organisations, of their lack of concern for male suicide, the fact that they will even try and blame the suicide in men for making women suffer. You know, these sorts of things go on around us all the time. And it's just a load of shit. I mean, seriously. It is so bloody clear that there is one group who are discriminated against in this world today, especially in a place like Australia. Men, particularly white men, but not only white men. Men in general are getting less care than anyone else. On that front, I do have to note that Aboriginal men get very little care. In the amount of care that is given to the Aboriginal community, Aboriginal men are the least cared for. And when it comes to immigrants, there are services for female immigrants. There are very few for male immigrants. So it's men across the board. Even the gay men. I'm going to bring this up because a trans, whether to male or from male, will get all the love and care and attention of the queer community for being trans. But a gay man these days is considered not to be, let's see, how would you express this in social justice terms? To be too white. Like a white feminist. They're too white for their own movement. That's essentially the word that we punch people in the face with these days. You're too white. You're white. There's something wrong with you. You're white. Well, this white bloke is sick to fucking death of it. He's sick of white being the go-to for there's something wrong with you. And I don't give a fuck. I'm not proud of my skin colour. It's just the colour I am. It was how I was born. It's not something I should take pride in. It's not something I should hate. It just is my skin. I'm not unhappy with it. I take no great pride in it, except that it's pretty healthy all up. Bit overweight. But, you know, I get a bit tired of other people telling me there's something wrong with it. I know this has been a ramble. I know it's just been me prattling on and on, but I just don't know where to start with this shit. It is just such utter crap. I'm going to have to sign out. Go fuck yourself with your queer shit. That's all I've got to say. I'm so... Look, I stood on St Kilda beaches in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, whenever it was. Must have been the early 90s. We did the candlelight vigils for HIV with the St Kilda crowd, and at that time I was hanging around with a lot of gay guys who, because I'm Flora, they used to call me Spreadwell. It was a great in-joke, and I don't care. Look, I'm a straight guy, but I can take a joke. I can have a laugh at myself. And we used to do these things like the candlelight vigils to get HIV recognised, because back then it was still being brushed aside as if, you know, this was just a gay issue and, you know, they should stop porking one another. I'm at a point now where I just don't give a fuck. I didn't get here because because I didn't want to care. I got here because you made me not want to care. It's sad. I am the sort of person who wants to care. I want to give a shit. But I can't. Not in the face of what you throw at me. You throw my whiteness at me. You throw your sexuality at me. And you expect me to just buy into all this crap you throw at me. And if I question it, you shout me down as a Nazi and threaten to punch me in the face. Gee, thanks. All the support I gave. I'm not a fucking Nazi. And I don't need your punch in the face. Go fuck yourself. Alright, I've been the anti-theocrat. That's another one done. May your gods remain fictional, and I'll see you in the next one.